Skip Press is back to tell more stories about his days at Celebrity Centre in the 1970s. Skip is a writer and author who has published over 50 books in his career and also was a reporter for such celebrity magazines as Premier Magazine back in the day. He tells stories on this show about Paul and Linda McCartney, Keith Moon, Chick Corea, John Travolta, Burton Cummings of the Guess Who, and Superman himself, Christopher Reeve. Then we go into Skip actually being assigned to the Rehabilitation Project Force in the late 1970s and leaving the Sea organization. I think you'll find this episode interesting and we hope entertaining. Here comes Skip Press. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our channel, Scientology Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and I'm here with my co-host, Janis Gillham Grady. How you doing today, Janis?
Good, Mark. Good day, everybody. And yeah, welcome back. We have another fun show. It's a continuation of one we did a week ago, and that's with Skip Press. So we're going to go back to the old days of CC down on 8th Street, Los Angeles.
Celebrity Center. Yeah.
Celebrity Center. Los Angeles. Yeah. So we're going to have some more fun with this and some good memories. And Skip just reminded us of a old saying, it's not Scientology if it's not fun. So that's what it was back in those days. So let's bring on Skip.
Hey, Skip, how's it going today?
It's going good. Sun's shining. You know, it's warming up here, so I'm feeling better.
Good.
It's around the corner, you know. So, and there's a story that I left out, which was very interesting. I've written about it before, but it was all showbiz around Celebrity Centre. You know, going up the bridge and everything. You know, Celebrity Centre really made Scientology pop in the U.S. Just period, right? But you never knew what kind of stories would happen from day to day. So there was a guy named Robert Young, and this is not the Robert Young that was in the Guardian's office. This was this guy who was, I guess he was a filmmaker. And maybe you've heard of this, Janis, because Heber was into it and your mother was into it. And he came up with this movie project called Safe Space. Did you ever hear of it?
I have a copy of that script somewhere.
Yeah. So this was the pitch on Safe Space, and they were all into it. Like, this is true. You know, Heber particularly was into it, and the deal was that after Jesus was crucified, he went back to his planet or something, and he was trapped in an electronic prison, but for daring to come down and help these Earth people, you know, right? And he figured his way out of this electronic prison. And so Jesus was coming back, and it was a UFO Jesus, right? And so, you know, me being in my early 20s at the time and in California, after having grown up in country towns in Texas, I was like, well, okay, maybe, you know. So stuff like that would float around all the time. You know, it was you know, conspiracy theories. Yeah, man. Yeah. If there was a conspiracy theory, you know, one time I talked about it last time, Chris Keogh. I don't know if he's Danny Keogh's father or something, but he said he was Stephen Boyd, the actor's brother, and he was going to put me in a play with Bibby Hansen, you know, Beck's mother, David Campbell's wife, and I didn't know at the time that Bibby'd been in Andy Warhol movies, you know, when she was like 15 years old and stuff, right? So, but I asked him one time, he was talking about past lives and people being in past lives and stuff. And he told me that your mother, Yvonne, had been Bodhidharma.
Who's
And
that?
it was a man who brought Buddhism to Japan.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a little different. I don't think he got it quite right, but he told me that. So this kind of air of anything could happen was always, and anything could have happened, was always floating around Celebrity Center, and things would happen. Do you remember Pat Robinson, Pat Marriott?
Yeah, Back Pocket.
Yeah, Back Pocket was the name of their group. And so they, and you guys floating around on the ship were, like the Mecca that all these people wanted to go to, and nobody knew where it was except a few people. And so, so Back Pocket, they had a recording contract with Peach Records, which I think Andy Williams owned or something like that. And Stephen Ambrose had a recording contract with it, he called not Elusive Butterfly, but Gypsy Moth, I think. It was called Gypsy Moth. Anyway, so they had I think they were on the same label. Anyway, they go to Flag to the Apollo, and they come back, and it's like, and they've concocted this this EP, like 3 songs on each side of a record or something, called Long Road Home. LRH, get it? Right?
Oh, okay. I have their album here still.
Oh, you do? Well, there you go.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so there, and I said, well, what was it like? And Pat Robinson goes, well, it was very unexpected. And I said, what do you mean unexpected? He said, we had a big party and everybody drank like a fish. and I said, how about Hubbard? Did Hubbard? He said, oh yeah. So it was like my glowing ideas of this big enveloping religious thing started to get eroded at that particular point in time. It was like, these people are human after all. But we had this thing every Saturday night called Poetry by Candlelight, and Spanky Taylor was and I were talking about this because she and her friend Patty Gatto, after Larry Evoy and Edward Bear came and played, and I mentioned last time it was cloudy, and they played a song called All the Stars Are Shining, and then people went outside, and it was all the clouds were gone, but so Spanky and Patty got to go off and travel with Larry Evoy and Edward Bear all over the place,
Right. That's right.
And so, and you had constant, incredible music. Jimmy Spheris would play with Jeff Levin and Jim Calger, who was on staff, who had been played with Ray Charles. Jim was a great musician, right?
Yeah,
and so,
I saw him 2 years ago in Nashville.
Yeah. And Jimmy would play his big song, I Am the Mercury, dedicated to L. Ron Hubbard, which is really a marvelous song, and it was completely magical. And he would have some of his friends come in and play. And David Campbell was always fantastic, who later became probably the best arranger in music, Beck's father. And
what about Chick Corea? Did he ever come by?
Yeah, I think Chick played once, but Chick really got involved in events after I was out of. I mean, I think he played big events and stuff, but Chick was doing big concerts and stuff. But I think Chick and Stanley played. Stanley Clark had played once. Amanda Ambrose, would come and play her song. And Amanda, when it was when we were still on 8th Street, Amanda was in a hit musical that was playing in Los Angeles called "Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope." and so some of us got to go see "Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope," and she had a big song called "If You Don't Want Me Walking on You, Then Get Up Off the Floor." You know?
Right.
So,
I remember that. Yes.
remember that song? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Skip, we did it. We've done 2 interviews with Amanda's daughter, Amanda Strawn, right, Janice, on our
Yes.
channel. Yeah,
Oh,
and yeah, they're sad, the abuse and stuff that she suffered. She was on the Apollo at one point with Janice and stuff. But anyway, yeah. So anybody wants to see, hear more about Amanda and Amanda Ambrose or whatever, you can watch our videos of interviews with Amanda Strawn.
Yeah.
Skip, there was also the Keyed Out Players.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were. Go ahead.
And Jeff Lewis.
Oh, Jeff Lewis. Oh yeah, Jeff Lewis and Solari and Carr. Tom Solari and Clark Carr. Now,
Right.
the thing that I didn't know as a staff member, these people would just show up. Sometimes I interacted with them, but not much. With some of these people, they were a big deal in show business itself. Like Amanda had played Carnegie Hall by herself.
Right.
Amanda had been a big deal. Solari and Carr had this goofy routine that they did where they got in these bags and tumbled around and stuff. And they'd been on the Smothers Brothers show several times,
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff Lewis was kind of just starting out. He made a living as a carpenter and everything, but he was really taking off, and he was, and so, the later when he did the group with Jeff Levin and Chris Main,
Celestial Navigations.
Yeah.
So, but Jeff was kind of in that frame of mind at the time,
Yeah, he eventually hooked up and was in lots of Clint Eastwood movies and was buddies with him, and that's where people most might know him by.
Yeah, during that time was when he was doing Every Which Way But Loose and all those.
Yeah, that was the late 70s. Yeah.
Yeah, and all those westerns with Clint. And I was like, Mom, why don't you get Clint Eastwood into Scientology? And she's like, well, Jeff's working on it. And she says they pick each other up and go to the gym and grunt, and then that's pretty much their only conversation.
That's right. Yeah. I know a guy who's Clint's best friend these days, a comedian named Tom Dreesen, and I met Clint before, but I could never see Clint having been in Scientology. He would have too many things to disclose about women.
Yeah.
So you had this atmosphere, and it was really cool. And I mentioned last time, how the Bill Keeler, saved Celebrity Center from destruction by forking over $25,000 one day one Thursday before 2:00. So there were things like that. The money deal was for staff members was not so good. I lived in one house over on Beacon Street, and the toilet, the one toilet upstairs, and it was the only one in the house, got clogged, and there was probably, 10, 12 people living there, and it didn't get fixed for like 2 weeks because they couldn't afford a plumber, And one time my shoes gave out, and I needed some new shoes, but I only had about $10, right? So I went to a shoe store down near MacArthur Park, and I got a pair of plastic shoes for $8. And that's what it was.
They're called flip-flops, right? They're called flip-flops?
No, they were like this weird plastic shoe that looked like a loafer, but
I was just joking. Yeah,
they were pure plastic, so the money was always kind of funky, and we were supposed to get, I think, $17 a week, or sometimes you're lucky if you got $5, and so that was always a battle. And
now you were Sea Org then, so they paid for your where you lived, right?
Yeah.
And your food?
And food.
Yeah.
And in those days, the crew, the CC staff, lived over at the Lake Street house, the old Charlie Chaplin house, and the basement was turned into the crew dining room.
Right.
And there was a small room off of that with a table in it that Mom had dinner with execs and Heber, and she always invited guests over. And then after dinner, she would introduce the guests to all the crew during dinner and have them talk. And I remember Heber's sister, Dorothy, came to dinner one night, and Bob Adams was there. Did Bob Adams play for the 49ers?
I think he played for
Kansas
San
City.
Diego. I think he played for
Oh, okay.
Chargers when they're in San Diego. I think that's.
Oh, okay. Because I remember that was the first time I met Bob, was at that dinner, and Dorothy, Heber's sister, couldn't get over the size of him. And I remember her standing up on a chair in order to be able to finally look at him because she was so small. But Mom used to have all sorts of celebs, even John Travolta, come to dinner down there in that basement, and she wasn't proud.
She had Seals and Croft for dinner one time, and they were of the Baha'i faith, Summer Breeze and all that sort of stuff, And
this is the house here, right, Janis?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Charlie
Down in the
Chaplin's
basement.
house.
Yep. Someone told me Charlie never lived there, but he owned it.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how true that is, that he didn't live there, but it was a beautiful house.
Yeah, it looked like
still there in LA.
Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so the real change, it's sort of like, like an airplane taking off, it was kind of picking up speed and stuff. The real change with the Celebrity Center and the staff and even money happened when suddenly we were going to move. And so one day we all got loaded up in a bus and looked at this hotel that's off the 405, sort of at the 405 freeway and Sunset Boulevard across the 405. It's this big round hotel. I think Spanky and I were talking about it, and it used to be a Marriott. And it's
a Holiday Inn. I know which one you're talking about. It's still there.
Yeah, it's
still
round.
there.
It's round.
It's right there at 405 and Sunset. You can see it because it's the only thing that's standing there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's it's a round sort of shape. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And we thought we were going to get that. And I thought, well, this is moving on up. This is pretty stellar, because over on 8th Street, that was MacArthur Park wasn't as bad as it is in recent years then, but it was pretty bad. It was kind of knocked in the head, and so we were going to move there, and I don't know what happened, but that fell through. So then it was 1551 North La Brea in Hollywood, which was really was a step up, and then the staff was going to live in the Wilcox Hotel, and so when we moved over there, that's really when things took off. Let's see, when did we move there? 74, probably.
That's the there.
75.
75, yeah.
Yeah, late 75. Right around the same time we moved from the ship to the Neptune and then Clearwater, Celebrity Center was moving.
Yeah, and so things really took off there now. And right across the street is the Hollywood Post Office, 90028. So they had the galley where everybody ate. That was in that one corner of that hotel on the lower floor in what had been a drugstore when it was a hotel, right? And lots of things happened there. That's Albert and Gay Ribisi were married, and Gay gave birth to Vonnie Ribisi and Marisa, in their room.
At the Wilcox?
Well, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. So the money was, when we first moved over there, money was just as tight. And many times some genius had figured out that rice and beans combined was a full protein, right? And so there were many meals that we had when we first moved over there that was rice and beans and survival crackers and this tea made from powder. Like
But now
powder.
rice and beans, this
Powder.
Janis Hubbard was the one who about rice and beans that I remember, because he used to sign like
Yeah.
flag service or crew, half pay and rice and beans for a month or something. You know what I mean?
That's right. But yeah, CC didn't have enough money. That's all they could afford. And I actually remember going to my mom's at the Wilcox for dinner, because she was on the other side of the lobby, and Tony Clock was her steward.
Yep.
And I asked Tony, can I have a glass of milk? And he said, no, that's only for the mothers and their children. I said, well, that's my mother and I'm her child. He still wouldn't give me a glass of milk.
Oh God. Yeah. And so the letter edges were in the front of the Wilcox, just west of where the corner was that was the galley, right? So we had central files there, and by this time I was the director of procurement, which means I had 2 letter edges working with me, and I was a letter edge, and I had a advanced scheduling registrar, I think it was called ASR, right?
Yep.
She sort of take things and move it to the next step, and a central files officer named Chuck Johannesson, and both of us were aspiring musicians at the time. So, and we would blast music, anytime, as much as we wanted, because everybody else was out of the hotel and over on La Brea, right, doing their thing, and so. One day, and so the Hollywood Post Office was right across the way. So, when we got a bunch of letters, and I'm sitting there typing them on my little portable typewriter, when the letters were all put together and stamped, we just walk across the street to the Hollywood Post Office, and deposit them. And at the time, the U.S. Post Office didn't like us very much. So they were throwing away some of our letters.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they got caught by a girl who was assistant guardian, guardian's office and stuff, and busted them on it. And they stopped doing that. So I was fascinated by the Hollywood Post Office, and here's another oddity in my little life. Across the street from the Hollywood Post Office was the Mark Twain Hotel.
Oh,
swear to God,
you're following him up.
Yeah, and so it's still there. And so one day I see, I'm in the post office and I see this guy and I go, "Hey, aren't you Omar Garrison?" And he goes, "Yeah, I am." And I said, "Well, hey, I'm a Scientology Celebrity Centre and all that sort of stuff. You should come have dinner with Yvonne Gillham, who runs it, And he was like, "Yeah, sure, okay." Now Omar wrote The Truth About Scientology, wasn't that the name of his book?
The Hidden Story of Scientology.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I got his phone number, I think, and so I would write these letters and I'd get replies, and somebody said they were interested in a course or something, and they became a hot prospect. Right, that's what we called them.
Right.
So I would take those central file folders under my arm and walk all the way, I don't know, a mile or something like that, over to La Brea. Right. So I took Omar's number over there with me, and I gave it to your mother, and she was kind of shocked, because it was she didn't have any contact with him, and I'd run into him in just sort of my normal odd things that happened to me.
Right.
And
now,
so
hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let's explain who Omar Garrison was. Had he already written that book about Scientology?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then years later, he was actually hired to be the biographer for LRH, Janis, right?
Yes, he was.
And he worked with your former brother-in-law, Jerry Armstrong.
Yes, he did.
And then that's when the S hit the fan, and Jerry took off with a bunch of files, and Omar, and that was all over. That's down the road. But anyway, so this is earlier.
Yeah. And so she invites Omar to dinner, but does not invite me. You know, but Omar had worked with Salvador Dali and had written a new Salvador Dali tarot card deck, right? And he gave me a Salvador Dali print, which God knows where it is, but I thought it was worth a whole lot of money at the time. So at least I got something out of it, right? And another time, I was QM one night, and it was really cold. Quartermaster, yeah, who, you know, the person that stays up all night and watches the hotel lobby and everything. And I look across the street, and in the bushes by the Hollywood post office, there's a guy who's drunk, falls down behind the bushes. So, you know, me, Dudley Do-Right, I go marching over there, and the guy looks like he's dead. And so I do the laying of hands, you know, I do the thing in the Scientology deal. And he sort of wakes up, and it turns out he's really drunk. And he's a former World War II veteran who's just sad about some things. So I bring him over and we give him some coffee stuff, talk to him, and then get his phone number, and his family comes and gets him. So, you know, saved his life, right? Probably, because he could have, you know, just frozen out there. It was really that cold. I think it was below freezing, you know?
Right.
So odd things like that were always happening. And so when I would walk down Selma Avenue to get to La Brea with these things and stuff, there would be these old guys cruising by in cars that would whistle at me. And I thought, what the hell? You know, what is this about? So the whole, I found out later that Selma Avenue was a hookup place.
Oh,
where young male prostitutes would hang out. Right? And
this is you back in the day walking around.
Yeah, no, that's me. That's me, man. And I was like, I'm crossing the street one day, and some dude who looked like he, you know, came from a Hollywood gay movie. he walks by and looks at me and goes, "Oh, nice," you know.
You know, it's funny. You know, it's funny too. If you'll remember this, Skip. Actually, when you walk down Selma to La Brea from the Wilcox, you walk right by Hollywood High School too.
That's right.
So that probably are looking for, you know what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about the La Brea property, okay, Janis? Right. This is the announcement. That's
the announcement. Yep, they moved from downtown Los Angeles up to Hollywood because La Brea was right off of Hollywood Boulevard.
Yes.
Yeah, and the building was on La Brea between Hollywood Boulevard and Sunset Boulevard. Like you couldn't get more central in Hollywood, you know, and so it actually was a good location for a celebrity center at the time.
Yeah, and it was a 3-story building, and they had much more space, and they built out auditing rooms on I think it was the second floor.
Right.
That right? Yeah. Yeah, and my mother's office was on the 3rd floor.
Yeah. And in the back entrance, people would park in a parking lot behind it and walk in the back entrance, and he had these stairs going up, and I think there was a big old painting that Ingo Swann painted. It just seemed like the celebrities were more prominent on a regular basis, real celebrities at La Brea. You know, like one time Jerry Quarry's younger brother, Jerry Quarry, the heavyweight champ, you know, his younger brother, I think his name was Mike Quarry. Mike gets into Scientology. And people would go up on the roof and confab and stuff, you know, particularly the celebrities. And one day, a whole bunch of guys from SRI, Stanford Research Institute, came and what they were all up on the roof. And so I just happened to be over there at that time. And so I walked up and I met Hal Puthoff and Ed May and another guy, and so those guys were, the movie, The Men Who Stare at Goats, that was those guys,
Yeah, Ingo Swann, for our viewers who don't know, he was a remote viewer guy, a remote viewing, his OT abilities or his ESP or whatever you want to call it. He's very famous. He has lots of videos on YouTube and stuff. And we've been asked about him before when we've done shows about.
We talked about him with Roger Weller. We talked about him with.
Yeah. And and one of the best guys, supposedly equal in ability to Ingo, was Pat Price, who had been in Burbank police and stuff, and Pat was an OT7, and so it was the place to hang out at on La Brea was Div 6. You come in the door, and just to your left is a big old room that was Division 6, a public division. And, and then you go to the right, and that's where the registrars were. And then there was a little room where we had the addresso, these little plates that would print the addresses on magazines and things going out. It was this whole different world.
Janis, let me show you this picture here. Describe who this is and all.
Oh, that's my mom on the right and Diana Hubbard on the left. And that was the opening of Celebrity Centre at La Brea. And in the white shirt in the back was John Fisher.
Oh, yeah.
He was the assistant guardian. He'd been in tech before being ripped off and put in the guardian's office.
Yeah.
And he was married to Audrey Fisher, wasn't he?
Yeah, I remember both of them. Yeah,
he was. And the sad thing is, John Fisher, I tried to find him for years and years and years. And then back in 2021, I found him.
Oh.
And he came to the celebration of life for my brother-in-law and my dad. And he got up and he spoke there. And this was during COVID.
Oh, I remember this.
And then I was like, I'm not hearing from John. He'd suddenly disappeared. He died of COVID.
Oh, man.
So it's like it was like I just found him, spent a little time with him, and then he was gone. But he was a good guy, good friend.
Well,
no relation to me, no relation to my side of the family or whatever.
Yeah. This reminds me of another aspect of life at the Celebrity Center. We had a thing called Orders of the Day. Did you have that you guys have those?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have a couple of copies of the original Orders of the Day that Robbie Levin gave me.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, so when we were still on 8th Street, Audrey Fisher was an auditor, right? So you could submit things for the Orders of the Day to be.
It was like a newsletter. It was like a daily newsletter.
Daily newsletter. Yeah. And so, Audrey, you're not supposed to talk about your case, your things on your mind and all that. And so Audrey writes that she had a big win in session, and this gets published in the Orders of the Day, that she'd been Harry Houdini in a former life. And she got put in a lower ethics condition for doing that.
Talking about former lives, when I was in, we have a class before first grade in Australia. We had a class called the Bubs. I guess it's the equivalent of kindergarten today.
Yeah.
Anyway, my mom had told me about past lives the night before I went to school, and there was a show, and it was a show and tell. So I got up there and I was telling everyone, these other 5-year-olds, about how my mother was Captain Cook's mate, and that's how she got from England to Australia. And the teacher could not get me out of the front of the class and back to my desk fast enough, And then she sends me home with a note to my mother about my wild imagination. For years, my mom and I laughed about my wild imagination on mom being, 1776, sailing to Australia.
Yeah. Hey, Janis, we just interviewed somebody that mentioned Knox Martin, and Knox Martin had a painting at the Celebrity Center, right? Is it?
Yeah, he did a mural on the wall of the La Brea building. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
the art was ongoing, but it's then on the tech side, you had the academy, where you could train up to be a class 4 auditor. Well, it was pretty stellar because it was run by James Fiducia and a guy named Ron Santerciero. And so we had a pretty stellar Scientology tech thing going on there, right? So, but Ron, the enterprising fellow that he was, he would buy cars and fix them up and sell them. He'd park them in the parking lot, right? And he would make extra money that way, because it was still, if we were getting $17 a week, we were lucky, And so,
Right.
Hey, let me ask you a question. Was Kenny Lipton working there then in La Brea? Was he in the Celebrity Center then?
yeah, I think he was still there. He was certainly in 8th Street. That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
I think he was. I know Mickey was.
Yeah.
And Ray Midoff was, and Bob Midoff was. They had their
And
music
Gelda.
studio. They had a music studio across the road where they used to record.
Yeah, I recorded some songs in Bob's studio. Matter of fact,
And Gelda Midoff, of course, was there too, right? With Ray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was at 8th Street, and right next door, wasn't there a disco right next door? Because I remember I used to go dancing with.
Yeah.
Greg Lebowski.
Next to La Brea. Yeah.
I'm on mission, and after hours, Greg and I would go next door and go dancing.
I remember when you guys showed up one time, and you were like, "Disco," and I was, "What's disco?" And it was right next door, but man, it was foreign to me, right? So, But so Ron Santerciero would sell these cars. So one day, Ron Ely shows up. Now, Ron Ely was
Tarzan.
He was Tarzan on TV at the time, right? And so Ron Ely's there, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know you were into Scientology. He said, what do you mean Scientology? I'm here. I'm buying a pickup.
He did get in, right? He got into Scientology, right?
I don't know.
Oh,
but
I remember him. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but all kinds of people would show up there. It was amazing. So I had been in Austin, Texas, before I came back to Celebrity Center the second time, and I had a roommate named Chester Snyder, and I kept in touch with Chester. So one day he writes me a letter, because I'd written him a letter saying, "Hey, I'm at the Celebrity Center, da da da." And so, back to Austin. So he writes me a letter and says, "Hey, I'm coming to Los Angeles. I am the head roadie for Paul McCartney in Wings. Do you want to go to the concert?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, here's my phone number. Give me a call." So he calls me, and Spanky is in the room, in this one little room off of on the first floor. I forget, we were talking about something, and I said, "Oh, hey Chester, how are you?" And so I stopped my conversation and I told Spanky, "Hey, I got to talk to this guy. He's my former roommate. He's a head roadie for Paul McCartney and Wings." And she's like, "What?" Paul McCartney, the great dream of Spanky Taylor was to meet Paul McCartney and marry him, probably, I guess, but just to meet him anyway, right? So Chester says, "Hey, Skip, I'm sorry, but everything's completely sold out. I tried, but I can't get any tickets and everything." So I tell Spanky, and she's like, "The world has ended," and she says, "Ask him, what if Chick Corea wants to come?" And I said, "You can get Chick Corea to come?" She says, "Yeah, tell him." So I talked to Chester and I say, "Hey, so I'm here with my friend Spanky," and she says, that Chick Corea would like to come to the concert. Do you think that would help? And Chester goes, yeah, let me walk across the stage and ask Paul and Linda. So he does. And Paul and Linda go, hey, Chick Corea, hell yeah. You know, because he's only like the greatest pianist on earth at the time.
Yeah.
And so we end up, me and Spanky and her husband Norman, and Chick Corea and Gail getting into the last concert, 1976 concert of Paul McCartney and Wings at the Forum in Los Angeles. We go backstage, and then Paul and Linda and all the group walk out. The McCartneys come out, some of the members of the band, they're preparing to go on stage. They meet Chick and Gail, and we're the rest of us are just standing back like, oh, wow. And so they've made seats for us on the side of the stage, right? It's like folding chairs on the side of the stage. Next to us are Rod Stewart and Alana Stewart, right? And we're all watching this concert, which was the greatest concert I ever saw in my life, And I'm like, 50 feet from Paul McCartney going, let it be, So, and Linda couldn't sing a note. You could hear her, but they blended it out. She had a worse voice, but she's up there playing piano and singing. And so, and then afterwards, Chick and Gail get to go sit with Linda and some of the people, and the rest of us are hanging back. We're not the celebs, and I get to talk to some of the members of the band, and they're like impressed that I know Chick Corea, and I've just only met him that night, right? And 3 days later, 2-3 days later, we get to go to the greatest party I've ever seen in my life. It's at the Harold Lloyd Estate in Bel Air, and Chick and Gail come, and Norman's got a car, I think, and I go with Norman and Spanky, and we get there, and you check in this little tent, and then you get in these white limos, and you go up a long and winding road to this circular driveway and get out there. And when I and it was like amazing, now everybody was supposed to wear all white. That was on the invitation. Well, Chick didn't share the invitation. He just brought us along. So I had on white pants and a blue and white checked shirt. So I was, not in uniform like I should have been, but that was all right. So we get inside, and every celebrity in the friggin' world was there. And I'm standing in line to get a drink. Next to me in line is this guy who says hello and shakes my hand, says, hi, I'm Rick Nelson. And I'm like, it's like Ricky Nelson I grew up watching on TV, right? So you name it, they had it there. They had the full cast of The Wiz performing on a stage. And I think it included Ed Love, who was a Scientologist, who'd been in dancing on Broadway. I think he was also in The Wiz, right? It had Chuck Norris doing a karate thing. John Belushi was doing his Joe Cocker imitation with a band on a separate little deal. And Larry Anderson, who was touring at the time as the star of the thing called The Magic Show, right? Larry Anderson was there, and Spanky and I run into Burton Cummings of the Guess Who, or maybe it's just me, and then I take him to meet the others. And Burton had just finished the drug rehab thing at Narconon, and he was raving about it. He got off drugs, and he was like thrilled about the idea of Scientology. And now there was a Scientologist named Al Mancini. Do you ever know him, Janis? He was he's from England. His wife's name was Carlin, and I'd corresponded with Carlin through Central Files. So Al Mancini was there. Now, all the Beatles loved Al Mancini because he was the host or the co-host of a big hit show in England called That Was the Week That Was. right? When the Beatles were coming up. So Al was introducing Chick and all of them, and I'm off wandering around by myself, to Paul and Linda and everybody. Tony Curtis is sitting in a big bay window thing with Jamie Lee Curtis and a couple of other people. Joni Mitchell and Warren Beatty have a knockdown drag out fight in front of everyone. Now this is a huge estate. It was packed. The McCartney spent $250,000 on this party. It had Nelson Riddle and his orchestra. Bob Dylan was there hiding in the bushes, and people would go in these bushes and talk to Dylan. It was just on and on and on, and so I see Paul and Linda walking by themselves. They're dressed in all black. So I go up to talk to them, but they see me with only white pants, and they just looked at me like gatecrasher and walk away.
Because you didn't get the invite.
No, didn't get the invite. Met Chuck Norris, and found out later that Chuck was friends with a guy named Hayden something, a writer who was good friends with Randy McDonald, who did Celebrity Magazine,
Right.
and Chuck never got into Scientology, but he thought it was okay. I met him, one of the nicest guys I ever met. And Larry Anderson was nabbed by Spanky, and he came into the Celebrity Center within a day or two, right? And got into Scientology because he had heard that if you did Scientology at that time, this is 1976, that would really help you in Hollywood with your connections and everything, because John Travolta and and all that sort of stuff. And as we're leaving, I'm talking to Keith Moon of The Who, waiting to get into a limo, right? I'm talking to Keith Moon of The Who, and I say, hey, I saw you one time play in Dallas. You had a big gong behind you, and you jerked your head back and hit it. Did you hit the gong with your head? And I hear clunk behind me. There's the guy holding his head, and I go, oh shit, I'm sorry. And Keith goes, hey, Skip, you almost killed a legend there. That's John Mayall. And I was like, oh my God, and Chick is laughing his ass off, right? So and then Keith and I are riding in the limo down to the tent area to go home. So all of this stuff happened. Spanky and I, a couple of days after that, ended up going to a Beatles festival with Burton Cummings of the Guess Who, who had done the Narconon thing. Right. The next day we tell Yvonne's very impressed by our exploits with this party, right? And the next day she wants us to tell everybody on staff in the galley at lunch about this party and this wonderful people, and these people are coming in and all this sort of stuff, and everybody is just looking at us like they were so jealous.
Was the purpose for you guys to network basically and try and make contact with all these different celebrities at the party?
Yeah.
Was that how it was?
Yeah, it wasn't like we just, we told her we're going to the party, and she was like, hey, great. Yvonne would always take any opportunity to go meet somebody and talk to them and stuff. So 76 was a really big year, and I'm in the lobby at La Brea one day, and this really good looking guy walks in and says he's here to meet Yvonne, and there was nobody else in the lobby except me. And I said, oh, great. What's your name? And he goes, I'm Chris. And I said, oh, nice to meet you, Chris. I'm Skip. What are you doing? He said, I'm from New York. I just got here from New York. What are you doing out here? He says, well, I'm going to be in the movie Superman. And I went, oh,
yeah.
I said, who are you going to play? And he goes, Superman.
Christopher Reeves.
Christopher Reeves, yeah.
Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
turned red all the way down to my toes, and I'm like, oh yeah, well, I can see it. Yeah, sure. And so I marched him off to Yvonne's office, right? So at the time, they had this big event going on called Prayer Day. You remember that? And he said, yeah, I'm here to meet Yvonne because I'm going to fly her and Heber down to a Prayer Day in Anaheim. And I went, oh yeah, because everybody was going to go to Prayer Day, and I said, oh, so you're a pilot? Oh yeah, I've got I rented a plane and stuff like. I said, can I go? And he said, no, we'll have, it's going to be full because Hector Carmona, our great registrar, Hector was going along, So this is all great. Prayer Day was going to be real cool and everything. Chris was solidly sold on Scientology. He's there playing Superman, and the best Superman ever. And he'd been on a soap opera in New York, or at least he was good friends with Jeff. Oh God, what's his name?
Pomerantz.
Jeff Pomerantz, yeah, and he was good friends. And I think Jeff got him into Scientology, but he got into Scientology not at Celebrity Centre, New York. He got in at Helen Geltman's mission.
Yeah,
the West Side mission in Manhattan.
Yeah, and so he paid a bunch of money, and so he wanted to get auditing at Celebrity Centre while he was doing Superman, right? So Yvonne called, I think this is how it worked out. Yvonne called Helen and said, will you transfer the money? And Helen's like, no way I'm transferring the money. And Helen refused to do it. And as a result, Chris got out of Scientology. He said, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to put up with this. I'm not going to pay for something I already paid for somewhere else. It should go, Jeff Pomerantz tried to talk him out of it. Nope. So Chris was gone. But that happened after he flew everybody down to Prayer Day. And which was really a good idea because it had representatives from all kinds of religions there. It was positioning Scientology to be total legit religion like all the other top religions and stuff, and great acts there. Chick and Stanley Clark played. I've still got a book of it, a Prayer Day book of this whole thing. Yvonne spoke, and Yvonne would do these readings of Harvard material that they actually recorded, like she did one on the Golden Dawn
and My Philosophy. They were recorded by Axioms.
Yeah. And they were very impressive, and she delivered that. She made L. Ron Hubbard sound like a genius, frankly, as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
And so that was really great. And Chick, but Chris left after this whole thing happened. But people would show up from all areas of show business. One time, the road manager of ABBA came in, and ABBA was the biggest group in the world at the time. And he was solidly into Scientology, and they were in LA, and he was going to try to get them all into Scientology, So this kind of stuff was going on all the time. It was the idea that if it's not fun, it's not Scientology.
Right.
Was really going on.
I was 17 years old. I was in LA, my first time there. I had nothing to do. So Mom said, hey, why don't you girls take Janny out and show us things? Well, they had backstage tickets to Three Dog Night.
Oh, man.
So they took me to Three Dog Night. I'd never been to a concert before. And we had, backstage tickets. So we go backstage and I get to meet the band and so forth. And we go back out and sit down. And I'm like, what's that smell? And Spanky's like, oh, someone's smoking pot. And she's trying to, what am I going to tell your mother? Well, anyway, I got to meet Mickey McNeil, who was the drummer of Three Dog Night at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So later on, after Cece had moved to La Brea, I'm there on mission in full Sea Org uniform. And I walk into Div 6 on the left, and Mickey's in there. And he sees me and he gets up, oh, hello, Pumpkin, and comes over. And I'm like, Pumpkin, I'm in full dress right now.
Mickey didn't care.
No, Mickey didn't care.
No.
I was going to tell you also, same thing, like in 1977, I was getting ready to go to Clearwater to join the Sea Organization. And I was doing what was called the Flag Readiness Unit, and I had to stay at the Wilcox. And anyway, we did expediting things, and I was at the La Brea, sitting in reception one time in La Brea, and it was right after word had gotten out that Priscilla Presley had been disseminated to, and I'm sitting there, and next thing I know, in walks John Travolta and Priscilla Presley into reception. And I didn't say anything because I'm just sitting there, you know what I mean? And like waiting to do something. And they just walked right in. It was like they were walking into the dentist's office. It was no big deal, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, John was around a lot at 1551. Here's a funny, there's this thing. It's always gone around, John's gay, John's bi, whatever. Well, at that time, about the 76 or so, 75, 76, John was in love with a woman who had played his mother in a
Diana
TV
Hyland.
movie, Diana Hyland. Yeah. And
Yeah.
John was totally in love with her, and James Fiducia was married to Joan Prather. So James didn't have to live in a hotel. Jeff Levin was married to Diana Canova, who was on Soap. She was a big star on Soap. So Celebrity Center was sort of just totally plugged into the Hollywood scene in maybe its best days and stuff, and you had people like, remember Sam Loria? Did you ever know Sam Loria?
Yeah, I knew Sam well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Sam, did you know Sam's wife, Jackie Loria?
No.
They were divorced, I think, by this time. But Jackie was, she was the secretary to one of the biggest agents in town, who was married to Annette Funicello, and he was at ICM, right? Jack Gilardi. And right across the hall was the biggest actors agent in town at the time. And her assistant was Cindy Pearson. And both of these girls were Scientologists, right? The lady agent was Sue Mingers. She was Barbara Streisand's agent, stuff like that.
Big time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you had stuff like that going on. Scientology had its hooks there, or if you want to call it, its lines into all top agencies and stuff like that. And we also there was a girl who was on lines at Celebrity Center who was taking courses there and stuff. And I thought, she's not a celebrity. I don't know why because you had to qualify of being close to or be celebrated, and there was a definition for it. And so I think it was Hector Carmona told me, he said, no, but she works at the DMV, so she'll get information on people for us.
Oh God.
It's like totally illegal, but that kind of stuff was going on. And around Division 6, it was the biggest gossip area of the PAC area, and you had things like, there was a girl named Eileen Z, and she was secretary to Lily Tomlin, all right, who of course was gay. So and Eileen was not. And so I'm in Division 6 shooting the bull with people one day, and Eileen comes in crying because Lily has been hitting on her, and so you had all these. It was like a soap opera sometimes around there, and you get this scuttlebutt on people, and at one time Burton Cummings. He didn't last long in Scientology, but one time after the McCartney party, he came in and he got a session or something. He was going to be on lines and stuff. And so he gets cornered in the lobby, and everybody's, Burton Cummings, guess who? And whoever was sitting there being the receptionist had a guitar. And so Burton grabbed the guitar and played an Elvis song for us, even though he was a keyboard player mostly, you know. So this was an extremely convivial atmosphere at all times, you know. It was really amazing.
Yeah.
And then the crapola hit the fan in 1977. And if you know what I'm talking about, and I have my theory about this, and Janis, I'd love to hear your theory about it. Suddenly, Rick Merwin was states for all of Scientology, I guess, on the ship or something, right?
Yeah.
So Rick gets sent to Los Angeles, and he buys a bunch of buildings, which was the Cedars of Lebanon Hospital. And he pays $13 million cash for them, right? And they need to be rehabilitated. Well, this kind of coincided with a whole bunch of top producing executives in the Pacific area, meaning Los Angeles, suddenly had a bad meter read called a rock slam.
Right.
Which means jerky like this or something, which means that you had evil intentions on Ron Hubbard or Mary Sue Hubbard or Scientology and stuff, right? So I'm cruising along. I'm writing 1,300 letters a week on my little portable typewriter. I'm coming over. I'm having things happen like the McCartney party and stuff like that. You know, I'm kind of happy, you know, things, and I can afford decent shoes, you know, so not plastic ones, right? And so I get called to Harry Kinnear's office. He was the ethics officer at the time, and he's got my PC folder. And James Fiducia, who is a big guy, Class 8 auditor, is standing there like this with his arms crossed like the enforcer. And Harry says, "You have evil intentions. You have a list 1, meaning the list L. Ron and all the rock slam." And I said, "No, I don't have it, you know. I don't have any bad intentions toward any of these people." "No, it's right there in your session thing." And I said, "No, I don't agree." And he says, "Well, you have to go to the Rehabilitation Project Force, the RPF." And I said, "I don't want to." And he said, "Well, if you don't, you get thrown out of Scientology and declared a suppressive person." And I'm like, "What?" You know? Well, sure enough, you know, so I go trotting over there, you know, and I'm completely deflated. I get there and I'm looking at what's going on. And really what was going on was all these people were sent over there, a lot of top executives, high producing people, to basically be a construction outfit rehabilitating this stuff. And you had the false purpose rundown going on. So they were auditing each other to uncover the evil intentions and all this stuff. So
yeah, you're talking about renovating the complex, the Cedar side. Yeah, we have Big Blue. Everybody knows it now with the big Scientology sign on it. That's the old hospital, right?
Yeah. So I, you know, my little bubble was burst at this time, and so I'm like, I don't want to do this. And so this girl says, "Come with me." And so she takes me down into the basement of this place. And this is the RPF's RPF, which means you have to work your way back up through the ethics conditions to be allowed to be on the RPF,
right,
to get rid of your evil intentions. And I went,
"Yep,
I don't want to do this." And so
I did the same thing as you.
Yeah. And so then she said, "Come with me." So she takes me down to a lower room, and there's a few people there, and these are called the turkeys. Right. So now I'm a turkey. And Andre Taboyan. Yeah. And another guy, and Andre was always touting himself as Mr. Martial Arts expert. I'll kick you, you know. And they would browbeat people, it just, what's bull bait? It was bull baiting, really, in a really nasty way, until some people would break and go, "That's it. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to get a lawyer. I'm going to sue," And at that point, there was a potential trouble source thing. I think it was type C, where it's like you get thrown out and you can't ever come back to Scientology. So I went, okay, I'm going to have to play cool here. I said, okay, well, I want to go back to RPS. So I'm doing that. And we had the wonderful benefit of being allowed to shower and wash our clothes in the shower once a week. So I'm and you had to have a twin who's watching you at all times.
Right. Right.
And so my twin was James Byrne. So I had all my little clothes in a pillowcase. So I'm standing there with I said, "James, go ahead. I can wait." He seemed to be anxious to get his thing done. And so while he's doing that, I see these stairs that go up to a second story. And I run up the stairs, I go out in the door, and there two stories below me is the ground. I jump off, and luckily I didn't break anything or sprain anything. And I left, and I marched down Sunset Boulevard about 5 miles, carrying my little pillowcase full of clothes, to a friend of mine who'd been on staff and left. And I got to stay in his and his wife's apartment. They had a 1-bedroom apartment, but they let me sleep in the closet in the living room, And so at that point, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but there was a problem. I had a very expensive Martin guitar and my typewriter, which I loved, and I wanted them back. All right. So I start making some money doing carpentry work with Chuck Johannesson, who'd been my central files officer. We started doing, I'm making a little money. Then I go back, and then Harry Kinnear said, I call him and say, "I want my stuff. I'm not going to be on staff anymore. I want my stuff." Says, "You can't have it." And I said, "No, you can't legally keep it." He says, and I'm marching on this line of don't threaten legal and get thrown out, And he says, "Okay, come to the Wilcox, and someone will meet you there, and you can get your stuff." So I go to the Wilcox to get my stuff, and there's these two guys there. Dan Mernan, who is a boxer, and John Segota, who's a big, tall guy. And these guys are a little bigger than me, both of them. There's arms like this. And a lady named Diane something. And she's trying to talk me into, billion-year contract. We're really trying to save the planet here. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I'll go back. And I'll finish the thing. I'll route out properly, it's called, right?
Yeah.
So I went and I did this, and there were some really nice people. Gary, somebody who had run the advanced organization AOLA, he was doing these security checks, right? And so he was doing these things and trying to find all these things on me, and he would get to the point where nothing is reading that's bad. Nothing.
Right.
Absolutely nothing. And then finally he would do, I think it's called a CS53.
Oh, yeah. Okay. CS53. Yep.
Yeah, a list. And you go down to things. Could it be this? Could it be this? Could it be this? You go down the whole thing. Nothing. And then he would hit nothing wrong in the first place. Bing, my needle's floating. So then there was a bunch of us who kind of went through something like this. So finally I said, okay, you can route out, you'll have a debt, a freeloader debt. You have to pay for all your stuff and everything. Okay, whatever. And then I get to the desk where you're routing out, And this girl hands me this thing, and it says, if you ever say anything about anything that happened here, you have to pay the church $50,000. And I go, yeah, sure. I said, you can never make that stick. You don't know anything about legal stuff, do you? No, you will. You'll have to pay $50,000. And I said, I don't think so. But I signed it. I got out. I got out, and it was rough. It was rough for a while. But so this is the catch.
Yeah.
I get my life together. I learned to do word processing. I get a car. I've got my own apartment across from the manor, the Chateau d'Elysée, which they call the manor. Right. It was supposed to be Celebrity Center, but the Guardian's office got it first. And so a guy shows up one day in my apartment at the Shangri-La apartment, who's an aspiring writer named John Osley, whom I think you probably.
Oh, yeah, I knew John. Yeah.
John. Now, John had been married to Paulette Osley,
right?
Who was head of qualifications, making sure the tech was perfect worldwide, right? And John would dine with the Hubbards sometimes on the ship, on the Apollo, according to him. And so John was out of the Sea Organization, and he said, I told him about my little RPF thing and the needle, and he said, no, that's because of Paulette. And I went, what do you mean that's because of Paulette? And he said, Paulette could not tell the difference between a rock slam and a dirty needle, which is just a kind of irritation and stuff, on a needle, right? And years later, I was always double checking things. Years later, while I'm dating Nikki Merwin, I'm telling this story, and Nikki goes, yeah, everybody knew Paulette had this misunderstood. And but when John told me, I went, okay, I get it. All of these high producing guys, suddenly they're bad guys. They got to go rehabilitate themselves. Meanwhile, they're rehabilitating the complex and fixing it up. And it's a free labor force, right?
Right.
And before I did the routing out final thing, James, somebody, missionaire, shows up, addresses everyone and says, oh my God, the Commodore found out what was going on here. This is not right. We're going to sort this all out. Some of you shouldn't have been here in the first place, right? So I've always wondered, and since you, Janis, were close to him, if Hubbard knew this and took advantage of Paulette's misunderstood and let these people go through all this stuff and all this heartache, thinking they had a bad, evil intentions. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, yes, he had that project going at the time and have the RPF use it. I don't think he realized how bad it really was on the number of people being taken off post. Now, I was one of those people that was removed as a List 1 RSer. So I was in the RPF going through the same kind of hell as everybody else. But what ended it was not LRH going, hey, what's going on? It was Kimma. Kimma was like, she's like, well, wait a minute. Policy says only 2% or 2.5%, whatever it was, is suppressive. How come nearly everyone is now suppressive? All these people that have been around for 10 years, myself included, there's something, they've now suddenly got evil purposes. So that's when Hubbard looked into it and said there was a mistake, and Paulette became the scapegoat. Because Paulette was not the one doing all those meter checks. Everybody was doing them, or any auditors were doing them. So she was just the scapegoat.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know that.
Yeah. But it was Kimma who spotted it and pointed it out to Hubbard, and that's when he then started having people reprieved and canceled from being in the RPF.
Oh, good. Well, I feel better about the old guy now. Yeah. So, you're told that if you left the Sea Org, your life would fall apart, things would be terrible, blah, 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 blah. Right. Well, I got a job doing word processing. I was taking the bus downtown, working in big law firms and stuff. And then I went on a game show. And you can find this on YouTube. It's called Skip Press on Knockout. That was the name of the show. And I won a new car, $14,000 in cash and prizes. And it was an NBC show. And my relatives all over the country took off work to see it. And suddenly, I am the definition of a celebrity.
Oh,
That's good.
I paid off my debt and stuff, and so celebrity. So it's like, hey, celebrity guys, how do you like me now?
That's
I've seen a few people like that who were treated like dirt in the Sea Org, and then they leave and they come back as a wealthy FCCI, having totally changed their life around and being successful at what they were good at.
Right.
Anyway, Skip, we're glad that you're here. We love the stories. We want to tell everybody here, please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Rock slam, like Janet says. Janet says the like button and the notification button, so that way people know when we have a show up. And this is a different definition of rock slam. It just means click that like button. Anyway, and also if you've got any questions or comments, please go down below and write them below, and we will ask Skip or we will answer them ourselves. If you would like to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee. There's a link in the description down there. And also, I don't have the little slide about the Janis's Outback Naturals liquid vitamins, but go down to our merchandise store. You can get any of our merchandise there, including autographed books from Janis and her Outback Natural, magnesium and liquid vitamins, and it's all there for you. So we just appreciate any support that you guys want to give us. Is there anything else you guys would like to say before we end off here?
I just say this, it's like, Leah's show, Going Clear, these things. There's been a lot of these things, and it's good that all those stories got out. But, anybody that went through horrors in Scientology or any other place, you can overcome them. You can overcome those things. And not long ago, Tom Cruise's sister got in touch with me and says that his family all wants him out of Scientology. Now, I don't know if this was a play on me, but it was legitimately his sister. So, that's maybe Scientology is not fun anymore. Sometimes it was, but it can be overcome even if it's horror. So,
right. It can. Look at us, all of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And now we can look back and laugh at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That's right.
All right, everybody. Until next time. Bye. We'll see you next show.
Bye.